This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Okay. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to a fresh new session on the economic theory classes. And we were discussing the producer's behavior. Uh, we were discussing the producer's behavior, right? Okay. Now, one of the important now over here in yesterday's discussion, what we had seen was the following. We had seen that the producer optimizes at a point where the marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue, and after that, so after the point, so the profit of the producer gradually fall, and before that point where marginal revenue is more than marginal cost, the producer is always producing at a suboptimal level if he is not producing at MR equal to MC. So that's what we have seen. So now what we'll try to do today is we'll try to assess that, we will try to interpret the first order and the second order conditions, right? And we'll try to understand that why is it or where is it that the producer is kind of trying to produce, or so why is it that the producer can produce at MR equal to MC, and what are the different what are the different criteria. So over here, we'll first of all, what we'll do is we'll try to, capture, right? We'll try to capture the, uh, first what we'll do over here is we'll try to capture the, uh, the cost structure associated with this particular farm, right? Okay. And from there, what we'll try to do is we'll try to put in the marginal revenue, and we'll try to see how is it that this cost structure and this marginal revenue, marginal cost actually works together. And we'll try to do this from the total cost curve that we have kind of plotted here. Okay, so let's first of all try to put, let's first of all try to understand how is it that the average cost structure of the farm would look like, and how is it that the marginal cost structure of the farm would also look like, right? So let's try to derive this intuitively from this graph Cx and this Rx that we have kind of constructed. Right? So let's, This is yes. I'll put this on yes, yes. So over here I'll have the total cost structure, and from here I'll have the average cost, marginal cost, and so on. Okay. Now let's have a look into this cost graph. So basically what you can see is that initially the rate of change is flat, right? And then gradually what happens is after a point of time the rate of change or the rate of addition to the costs are gradually increasing, right? So what does this mean? So what it means is that at each stage the marginal addition that is happening to the cost in the initial point is lower. So and after a point of time that gradually increases, or that marginal cost gradually increases, and hence the graph moves from being a concave, a flat, to a steeper and a convex curve, right? Now over here, if the addition to the the marginal addition is in kind of, so if the marginal addition to the cost is lower, so what it means is that the revenue that you are earning corresponding to that cost is relatively higher, right? So the output that you are producing, the total increase in the output is much more than the total increase in the cost, and hence in the initial part what you will see is that the total cost and the average cost curve, average cost of the average cost of production is gradually declining. That is the reason why when so that is the reason why uh, you get to see a downward sloping average cost curve initially in this classical cost structures. So basically what you can see is that the marginal addition to the total output is total cost is lower. Therefore, when you are trying to computing the total cost by the total output increases at a much faster rate than the total cost, and hence the average cost in the problem, or the average cost of the producer, starts going down. Now why is this so? This is because initially in these regions, in these points, in this region, the producer has just started operating, and the plant size that he has much more excess capacity, and every time he increases his production or he scales up his production, he starts getting benefits from the plant size, from the size of the economies, and so on. Now after a point of time when the optimal plant size has been reached, right, and the optimal usage of the plant has been done, from there onwards, if you try to increase your output further, there it gradually starts reversing. Now the addition to the cost is much more than the output that is being produced, because the farm has reached its maximum capacity. So when the farm reaches its maximum capacity, right, that one thing that you generally get to see is that your cost comes up to this point. Let's say this is your average cost curve, it comes up to this particular point, and as the output of q star is reached, right, corresponding to this q star, the plant's optimum efficiency, the optimum capacity has been reached. Now given the same plant size, because in the short run you cannot increase your plant size, so what will happen is it will kind of start increasing. The average cost of production will gradually start increasing. Now, why is this happening then? This is happening because of the fact that the marginal addition to the costs or the pattern of the marginal addition to the costs have changed. So initially, where I used to see the marginal additions being lower and lower, right? then after a point it started rising, and then it just went down. So basically, as the marginal cost of production goes up, right? So there what happens is, so what happens at that point is that the producer, so as the marginal cost of production, marginal cost such, I mean, kind of goes up, means that the additional strain on the resources is kind of increasing, right? And hence the that would create an excess demand in the market, and that would cause the prices to rise. So therefore, following an upward sloping marginal cost curve, right? Following an upward sloping marginal cost curve, the prices will also increase, right? So the profit maximization exercise, when the profit maximization exercise happens, this profit maximization exercise happens at a point where not only marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, but the marginal cost curve is also positively sloped and it is rising. So now the question is that in a perfectly competitive market, how does the marginal revenue curve look like? So I have seen the marginal cost curve over here, but what I have not plotted over here is the marginal revenue curve, right? So this is something that we need to plot. So how does the marginal revenue curve for a perfectly competitive market would look like? So this is something that we are going to talk about. Let's have a quick look over here. Okay, so before I move on, is this cost structure clear to us? Are we clear on as to why the average cost is falling initially and then it is rising up? Why is it the marginal cost is falling and then it is rising, the marginal cost is rising up? So is that part clear? Any questions from this point? So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, fine. So now you're clear about the marginal cost side. Now, if you think about, so now let's quickly, very quickly, let us look into the profit maximization exercise that we had kind of created over there for the perfectly competitive market. So over here, revenue is Rx minus the cost structure X. So revenue over here is nothing but P bar dot X minus the cost function, right? So this is under, so this, the first expression that we had talked about was under any general market. So any market where you have a typical revenue function, but given this, the revenue function that this particular firm has, this pi x has, so the first order condition over here is r prime x R prime is equal to C prime X. So P bar is equal to C prime X. So this is what the marginal revenue equal to marginal cost curve, marginal revenue equal to marginal cost graph. And the second order condition says that the C double prime X should be greater than C. So these are the three, so these are the two criteria, right, for the profit maximization. Now observe that there are a few other things which also needs to be. Now this is the basic profit maximization criteria. But now the point is, let's say the marginal cost curve is increasing. So the marginal cost curve is increasing in this entire domain, right? If I chalk this part out, this is the part where the marginal cost curve is increasing. Now, let's say I have the P bar such that P bar equal to marginal cost curve over here, right? This is P bar, where again P bar equals to marginal cost curve. And this can be another P bar is right. So these are the three possibilities where the price equal to marginal cost can happen. Now, if this is the price equal to the marginal cost region, here the firm will earn a supernormal profit. Firms will earn a supernormal profit. Why? Because over here, both the marginal cost and the average cost is taken care of. So when I say the average cost, I imply the average variable cost and the average total, the average fixed cost. So all these have been kind of taken care. Okay. So over here, the firms will earn a supernormal profit because they are not only covering up their average like for marginal cost, but also they are kind of covering up their average costs, right? So they have covered up all the fixed as well as the variable costs, right? Now the second part is they earn supernormal price. Here, at this point, the price is equal to the marginal cost, but the firms earn long run profit or a normal profit. So over here, the pi is exactly 0. So when I say 0, I don't literally mean 0. What I mean is that the profit that they are earning over there is actually very less. So this is where we have the normal pie. And over here, the bank cannot cover its average cost, right? So this is the point where the price is such that it is below the average cost curve, right? So therefore, this is a loss-making fund. This is a loss-making fund. So basically, when we are kind of trying to assess whether a firm is actually a loss, is whether a firm is actually maximizing its profit or not, we don't we cannot just look into the price equal to marginal cost. Also, we need to understand that at that price, by charging that price that it is producing and the cost that it has generated, has the firm been able to cover up all its costs, and then it is kind of generating some additional revenue, right? And that the revenue that the profit from that they generate is the maximum possible profit. But it could also be the case that the firm does not generate a profit; it just generates a long run profit or normal profit, or it becomes just a loss making firm, right? So so to assess whether the profit is maximized or not, right, or whether the farm is making a profit, we also need to take into consideration the average cost curves, right? But given the average cost curves, and given that all these conditions satisfy and the firm is actually making a profit, right? The point from the minimum average cost curve. So for the minimum point of the average cost curve, right up and above. So this portion of the marginal cost curve from the minimum point of the average cost curve to this part. So, so this part of the farm, this part, this part from the minimum point of the average cost curve and above is your supply. So if the price is equal to the marginal cost, right, and it lies on the supply curve, it automatically means that at that price the producer is earning a supernormal profit, and it has and the price is such that it has already covered, and the cost structure is such that the revenue has covered the or it has been able to cover the average cost of the costs on an average. It has covered all its average cost. It has covered all its variable total fixed cost, to average total fixed cost. It has covered its variable cost, and above that, it is kind of performing. So this part, the MC, this part is called the supply curve. And over here, higher the prices, higher is the supernormal profit, and hence higher is the willingness of the borrower to higher the willingness of the producer to sell the goods, right? So this is where, so this is how your supply curve would typically look like. So you have zero, you have Q, and you have P. So I have the P star and I have the, and higher the prices that I would charge, the higher will be the supernormal profit, and hence the higher will be the willingness of a producer to sell. And this is the reason why it is done. And why should that be? Because the supply curve is the point from the minimum point of the average cost curve and above, and hence any price point lying on the MR and satisfy the MR equal to MC condition over here will ensure that the firm will be earning a supernormal profit. And higher the prices are, the higher is the supernormal profit earned by the business. So this is how your typical supply curve would look like, and this is how you would you need to do your typical analysis about the supply. Right? So that's one. Fine. Right. So any questions after this one? Right. Okay. Fine. So let's take a small pause here. Now, what we'll talk about is the consumer's behavior. So, what we have seen is the profit maximization leads us to the supply curve. Now, we'll see how utility maximization leads us to the demand curve. And also, we'll see some of the dynamics of the supply curve as well. Right? And some of the implications that a shift or a movement along the supply curve can have for an economy. So these are the next questions that we talk about, right? We'll just take a small pause over here for a couple of minutes. Till then, you can think about any queries you have or not, and kind of get started again.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So let's say, so we saw how the supply curve would work, right? Now, one of the important questions that we started talking about over here is that the supply curve is positively sloped, and you have the prices and the quantities defined over here, right? So one of the important questions that we would like to talk about over here is that the different types of supply curve. So what does each of the supply curve imply, and how do the how does each of the shape of the supply curve imply? And how is it that a shift of a supply curve or a movement along the supply curve, so what are the respective interpretations, right? And along with that, we would want to understand, like, if there is a vertical supply curve or if there's a horizontal supply curve, so what does that essentially mean, right? So these are some of the important questions that we would like to discuss. So over here, as we saw, that this is a certain price and a quantity measure. Let me reconstruct this graph a little bit. So that will help in explanation. That will help me in explaining it further. Q and I have the price P over. The supply curve that I'll have over here is something like this. So the supply curve is something which is like the price equal to the marginal cost above the minimum point of the average cost curve. Okay. So now let's have a quick look into the price. So basically, let's say at this price, this is the quantity which is supplied, or this is the amount that the producer is willing to supply. So if the prices go up, if the prices go up, right? So if the prices go up, the the willingness to produce increases because hope of a greater profit. Right. So this is the price. Now over here, a few important things that we have over here is P0, P1, P2, Q0, Q1, and Q2. So one of the important things that comes out over here are the following. That that as the prices increase, right, the quantity, the willingness to produce also increases. Now, now this market. So now you will say that that this is a very hypothetical situation because the market that we have with us is, or we have constructed this curve under the assumption of a perfect information, under a perfect information. Now how is it that we would know that this would happen in real time as well? Right, in real time I may not know what the actual price of, or what the actual price that I will get for a particular good. So this result holds in the presence of perfect information. Now let's say I do not have perfect information in my market, right? So if this assumption of perfect information is removed, can this relationship hold between the prices and the quantity demanded? What do you think? So I would like to take a pause over here, and I would like to take your thoughts that if I remove this particular part, assumption of perfect competition, right? Will the, I mean the perfect information, then is it possible for the supply curve to be positively sloped? So my question over here is, can this hold without perfect information? Can this hold without perfect think? So can this relationship that we have this positively sloped relationship hold between price and quantity? Can this hold if the market where we are operating is not a perfectly competitive market? Yes, anyone? Okay, so let's say Anisha gets a salary of gets a job on the campus with a CC of 10 lakhs per annum, right? She is very happy about it. Anisha, you can feel very happy about that fact. Now, after so now she is actually very motivated, and she goes to office, works 10 hours, 12 hours, and just to justify the salary, and she's kind of working very hard, getting work on weekends, and she's really willing to grow. One fine morning, Anisha meets a friend of ours who is based out of the US and gets into a discussion on the work, and they realize that both of them are doing the same work, right? But she realized that her friend in the US gets paid 3 times more than she does. So now what happens? So now Anisha realizes that she's thoroughly underpaid for the profile, right? Even though she was very happy about it. So this is perfect information, right? But after a few months, again, her appraisal happens and her CTC goes up to 11 lakhs per annum. Anisha is again motivated to work. Now she has been given a hike. But then one fine morning, she's kind of early into the office, and she goes up and down a shared drives, and she finds a file, which is called the billing file. And then she looks across the billing files and she sees that she as a resource is actually charged at for that year when she's being given 11 lakhs. She's actually charged at 80 lakhs for that year, and the difference is the amount that the company is taking away. Now, what does Anisha do? So, is she equally motivated to work now? Anisha, they बोली ना. Will they be will they be equally like motivated to work right now after you know the actual price? You won't, right? So you would know that there is a huge amount which is being exploited. So you're actually not being paid what you should be paid. But a few days back, when you got your annual increment and your CTC went up to 11 lakhs, you were actually happy and you were jumping around. And you had given your friends a treat and you were like up the next morning, you're ready to take on the corporate world. So what has changed in between? What has changed in between is the information, right? So the perfect information. So therefore, in so my point over here is that in a imperfectly compare in imperfect information market, right? it is not the actual prices which drives the quantity supplied or the willingness to produce. In an actual market or in a market where there is imperfect information, right? It is the expected prices, right? That or your price expectations which cause you to or which causes an increase in the effort. So the actual price, what the actual price is, you cannot see. So it is the expected prices and a peer benchmarking, the locally available information which drives your effort actually. So all your friends who had got around, let's say, a 8.5, 7 annual package, and you had got a 10. So that actually makes you believe that you are actually being hired at a better position, at a better payroll, and you are getting the job, and you are doing the job. But what actually the thing, so what actually the thing is that both of you are being more or less exploited to the same factor, which you did not know until and unless you came across that billing book, right, or that billing Excel sheet. So so it is that expectations of the price and your average and the average information set which is available to you, right, which makes you or which gives you the incentive to drive your effort. So it is the set of it's a local information, not that global information set, which drives your willingness to produce in a perfectly competitive in a market which is imperfectly competitive, where there are information screenings, right? So this is simple. So this is something very similar to what you call the workers misperception model. The workers misperception model provides a very strong foundation, a very strong micro foundation to the macro structure of the supply curve, right? And it says that it is a difference between the actual price and the expected price which drives the supply curve, right? So it is not the actual price in a market where there is imperfect information, right? Where information is sticky. So in such a market, what finds out a way, or what gives you way, is the expected prices. So let's say you are changing a job. Let's say the person is changing a job, and and you are actually bargaining with the HR. The HR says, no, I'll give you 25% hike. Now they will like, no, I wanted 30% hike at least. This is what my friends are getting and all. And then she says, okay, fine, fair enough. I'll give you a 35% hike. Now Devolina is very motivated to work for that organization. But maybe that what the others are getting in that organization for the same role is maybe much higher than what Devolina is actually getting. But that's an imperfect information, because you are not allowed to ask salaries on the floor, right? So there are these information barriers which are created, confidential contracts, and through these the information is kind of barred, such that the only factor that is left to you to explain or to provide your effort or to increase your effort is an expected price change, which may be much below that, much below compared to what the real prices are. So what we generally tend to look into are the nominal prices, right? The nominal. So for us, it's the packages or the CTCs. But we never get to know what the actual CTC is for that particular job. So our CTC is driven by expectations. So it is the expected prices or expected price changes which drives the effort in a real world where there is no perfect information. But the basic relationship remains the same, right? So this is something that this is an important. So this is something that we should always keep in mind when we are talking about supply curve, the demand curve. So over here we get to see the observed prices, but in a market when you don't get to see the observed prices, with observed prices is not a perfect information. There it is the expected prices and the local benchmarking and your position relative to the average prices that everyone is getting who's the same work is what determines your effort. So your the price that you are expecting and the distance between that expected price and the average price existent in the market is that is the difference which will drive your motivation to work. So this is something which we need to keep in mind, right? Is this part clear? Any other questions? Any other questions? Is this part clear? Perfect. Okay, so since we don't have too much of an audience today, so let's take a pause here for the day. Let's not continue it further because many of them are kind of suffering from internet connectivity issues. Some of them are not well. So I got a couple of mails today. So let's start off afresh with the demand curve and the consumer utilization maximum utility maximization from the next class onwards, right? So, and if possible, if I'm able to take a class during the weekdays, I'll let you know and I'll take your time like 24 hours in advance and then we can have a discussion. Okay. So thank you guys. And let's close the session for the day because I don't see too much of the people here, right? So I don't want them to miss out on utility maximization itself. So let's get started with this from next week onwards, right? So have a great week ahead. Enjoy your time, enjoy the week, and let's catch up next weekend. And in the meantime, I'll upload these recordings in the Google Drive, in the YouTube channel. You can access that. So you can go to the channel link and you can access all the recordings. And do share the channel link and do tell your friends about the same in case they get helped by it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye.